It's 12 o'clock. All right, guys. Thank you for joining us today. We have Jonathan Klunk and Eric Feller. Jonathan is one of the most highly regarded people in our market. David Orange had a family emergency, so he wasn't able to come on. But David's super great, manages a ton of properties just like Jonathan. Jonathan is on top of it. If you're in the Louisville Airbnb group, he's literally updating us all the time. And he takes it super serious, and it's really great to have that kind of ally in the market. First of all, anything we say today is our own opinions, not necessarily KREIA's or anything like that. So, but I think this will be a pretty docile one. But it's interesting. So Airbnb is just super lucrative, guys. When the market's great, I think I was talking to Luke Neubauer, the math was like 2.5% return relative to rentals. But there is more work. It's less passive, and you have more effort that needs to be put out. Jonathan has some questions and talking points, and I have some questions for him. Eric's going to help populate some of those as well and answer to the best of his ability. Let's get started. Jonathan, introduce yourself.
Thank you. So my name is Jonathan Klunk. I am the owner of a short-term rental management and cleaning linens company called Key Source Properties, and also a real estate agent with Gant Hill & Associates. So we see a lot of real estate across the city, and more nationally with short-term rentals. So we bring that national exposure that we have, bring it to the local market. We've been involved in short-term rentals for about 6 years in some capacity, starting with just our own residents and growing organically into where we are today. I would be lying if I said I saw an opportunity and set out to build a short-term rental management company. It found me, I like to say. But I mean, that's our background. 6 years involvement. We've seen the highs, we've seen the lows, we've developed strategies, and right now we want to continue growing our business and sharing that knowledge and information with others, because you can self-manage properties. I think, a lot of times in conversations that I'm in, people forget that. And there are actually a lot of times when I encourage people to do that. I don't think that management is a good fit for everybody for short-term rentals. But, I do have my talking points today, just to kind of give you a quick overview in case anybody wants to think of questions in advance. I'm going to just touch briefly on COVID-19 and what that's meant for our business and the industry.
Sure.
I'm going to talk about the investor outlook of short-term rentals, and locally speaking, permitting and commercial use. Do like a high-level overview of some frequently asked questions about permitting, and then to go into when to use a management company versus when to self-manage and some of those pitfalls. And if I'm too high level and people want to get more lower level, just submit questions. Happy to do so.
Dig in. We're happy to hear it.
Okay. So essentially just 1 month ago, I think that this conversation may have been different. As I mentioned early on, I'm going to try not to let the effects of the coronavirus and what it's done to real estate and to tourism and hospitality kind of drive my conversation here today. But, currently the state of the market is we are seeing minimal reservations that are being made through traditional short-term rental channels. So a channel is going to be Airbnb, VRBO, and those who are set up to accommodate our industry and individual hosts. Some buildings downtown have even banned short-term rentals temporarily, just to help reduce guest traffic and contamination for people who are staying healthy at home right now.
Sure.
I am in my office, but I'm the only person here. So we have had to furlough employees just like so many others. We do hope to bring all of them back though, but right now we are on a skeleton crew running the business and maintaining the operations and responding to emergencies. Let's see, Airbnb is working on a very small host repayment plan. If you're currently active in short-term rentals and doing Airbnb, you'll see that there were some announcements made about that. Some of the details are still a little murky, but I don't expect anybody to receive a big payday from this. I think the last I heard that they were paying out 25% of what people would have received under their cancellation policy. So the most popular cancellation policy on Airbnb is moderate, which means you can cancel up to 5 days before your anticipated arrival. So this would essentially, for those people, only impact those 5 days of cancellations. For a lot of people, that could be one reservation. And so you would receive 25% of what you would otherwise have received. The amount of money that's being set aside, at least initially, is about $250 million from Airbnb. But as of a year ago, there were over 6 million listings on Airbnb. So, I mean, you're talking about, even if there were just, split among 1 million hosts, that would be about $250 a piece. So I don't think that this is going to be a big payday, and probably just more of, kind of a media buy for Airbnb, especially since, they're trying to go public this year, which I'm sure this has greatly impacted. But, short-term rentals follow hospitality quite seamlessly. It's not an exact indicator, just like, the stock market is not an exact indicator of the United States economy and the health of it, but it is a good benchmark to follow. The Omni right now has made the decision to completely close their doors until at least June minimum. I've heard that 21C has done the same. So there are some built-in abilities within short-term rental properties to pivot in emergencies and situations like this and behave a little bit differently. And hotels just really don't have that ability to do that. They don't have the kitchens. They don't have adequate sized living space for any period of time, unless you go into some type of an extended stay hotel. So those who are poised to take advantage of the market and are set up in an operation can, it's not guaranteed, but they can find other abilities, especially right now. Does anybody have any questions about COVID-19, the current state of the industry, how scared everybody is, or anything like that?
Yeah, real quick, Jonathan, going back to your the cancellation. I don't know, for anybody that has Airbnb that's been dealing with these cancellations right now and the 25%, I did see, have you seen what the traveler is seeing when they now try to cancel? You're getting two options. One is cancel along with the cancellation policy of the host, which if it's strict is 50%, in which case you're supposed to get your 50%. The other is 100% refund in a travel credit issued by Airbnb, and that's when you're supposed to get the 25% of your normal cancellation. So what I just saw is there's a third option that they're not showing guests, which is on the bottom, there's a learn more button. And if you click that, it talks about the extenuating circumstances. And that's where the people can get their 100% refund and you get the 25%. But I think what people aren't seeing that, what I've heard is if people click the 50% refund or just to get refunded along with the cancellation policy, and then they're calling to say, hey, why didn't I get my full refund? You're not getting the 25% of that. Then you're just you lose the money. Have you heard anything about that procedure and the way it's working? I mean, no one's gotten their money yet anyway, so I don't even know what the point is.
No, I'm not aware of the details, the specifics on the guest side. We often learn about these things as guests bring them to our attention. And we've had a pretty solid sweep of cancellations across the board, which is, not necessarily a bad thing, because obviously if Kentucky goes into kind of, lockdown at any time, I don't think that it's imminent right now. We would have already done it. And I think came out today, we're ranked #1 on as a state on COVID response, which is amazing without even needing the lockdown. But, travel is still very much limited at this time. So we're encouraging cancellations because that's what allows us to use our properties for other use right now. I have somebody out showing properties to a number of people. They're listed more as furnished month-to-month traditional rentals at this time. And obviously with reservations in place, we can't do anything about that. So we're also proactively canceling some, especially as we get more longer term rentals in. And this is an unprecedented time for hosts as well, that we can cancel reservations without penalty also. In full disclosure, my the second floor of our house where we started our business, we're currently not allowing anybody to stay there, just because, we've made the decision, since we share certain spaces like entrance to the building, even though we have completely separate HVAC systems, we made the decision to not rent that out right now either. So there are people who are just taking their properties completely off the market. And I can't imagine anybody is using Airbnb in the way that it was founded to rent a room of their house. I think that is a little insane if people are continuing to do that, either as a guest or a host, but for any length of time. But that's where we are right now with our cancellations. We're just kind of proactively canceling so that we can do other things with the properties also. I'm not expecting anybody through the end of May. Did
you pick up any students that were kind of left homeless from the dorms? Were you able to pick up any of those kids, adults?
Yeah, I have not heard anything about that. The few reservations we are getting are, usually about 2 weeks at a minimum. And many of those are even extending beyond that. We've also had a lot of people reach out to us directly. New York has been a hotbed for people to want to escape, and people just want to be in cities that aren't locked down. Not that, they're any more or less safe, I think it's just a psychological thing. And also just being near friends and family. If you're on the 30th floor of a building in Manhattan, I can't imagine even trying to get the elevator alone, how long that would take. So I think a lot of people are just, if they have the means, they want to have less complications in their life during this while they ride it out. So they're relocating as well. We've had about 5 or 6 of those people.
Well, and then another thing is, historically, if you partner up with nonprofits to like put traveling nurses in, or people getting cancer treatment or whatever, you can write off the difference of what you would actually charge. Or have you talked to your CPA about writing off any of the previous bookings you would have had or anything like that?
So unfortunately, whenever you loan your property out, you're actually only able to deduct your expenses. Because we have a property out of state, and we've often donated that to nonprofit organizations to rent for charitable purposes. And we've always my CPA tells me that I'm only able to deduct the expenses, that percentage of my mortgage and utilities, and not what I would have earned if it was on the market. Travel nurses, it's interesting right now. I don't think that we're getting a whole lot of those. Kentucky hasn't been identified as somebody who's going to have a need for a lot of additional resources. Most hospitals are being proactive right now and changing, canceling all non-essential procedures. In fact, I heard that some of the hospital systems are losing up to $15 million per week because they have gotten rid of elective surgeries and minor issues, and they're making essentially everything capable of being an ICU pretty quickly. So with the limited number that they have, limited amount of, I'm worried more about contamination with the hospital staff and having them quarantine. We're actually friends with a nurse who goes back to work, I think today. She was confirmed to have it and has been isolated for 3 weeks. So that's more of what I've worried about, but I don't think that we're going to have a massive issue here. We have had conversations with the city about being kind of some failover for them if the bed count increases. I honestly feel like hotels are a little better suited for that, because some of our houses are 7-8 bedrooms, so you need a family. You can't make individual rooms. But that's yet to be seen how that will impact. But our projected peak isn't until I think in June anyway, so that could definitely change.
There's a lot of positives that are going to come out of this too. I mean, you got to think maybe people aren't going to want to go on cruises anymore, so maybe you'll pick up some more local business here. You got to think that might get some people that didn't feel comfortable in New York, and maybe we'll start migrating back to Louisville and Lexington because they're the big cities in Kentucky. It could be really good. you're probably thinning out the herd for Airbnb too, so maybe less competition. Might be able to pick up some commercially zoned Airbnbs, which could set you ahead if anything like Nashville happens again. I mean, there's a lot of really good things that could come out of this, as long as you look at it in a good way. I mean, you're a smart guy. You're well equipped. I'm sure you balance your portfolio out. So, I mean, but I'm sure it's tough right now. A lot of people are looking at their mortgage payments and whatnot. It's interesting. Do you think they might lighten up? Like the 600-foot rule maybe isn't as big of a deal as everyone thought before.
Never.
Well, what about in Churchill Downs? I heard they've been a little bit more lenient in that and calling it more of an entertainment district. Frank Miller was saying, hey, I'm looking, he's got an opportunity to get a deal in Churchill Downs. That might be a good candidate for Airbnb. Would you go ahead and buy it? And then second question, if you feel confident in that, would you feel confident that would get approved? I said that really weird. I was reading it. Sorry.
Well, I mean, I think that, if they expand it into being an entertainment district, they'll have very strict boundaries around that, just like the area on Washington Street in outside of Nulu downtown next to the stadium. They just kind of want an expanded area outside where maybe you can, this probably has something to do with the hotel as well, and hopefully the addition of casino gambling in the near future, kind of setting them up for that. I still can't see people like walking out the door with an open container and getting into their vehicle. So I doubt that entertainment district would really be extended into the neighborhood. One thing that particular area has always kind of had against it a little bit is perception from visitors. 50% of the people think that it's great, that it's fine. Another group may feel a little unsafe. And that's where, the review system can be a little bit tricky on some of these sites. If you get a bad review, it can get buried. You can, easily recover from that, the star treatment. However, it's a mixed bag. It's a street by street, block by block area throughout there. And everyone's perception and their expectations are very much different. My suggestion is, in an area like that, be sure to be very, very accurate in your description and in your pricing. Know who your audience is, who you're trying to attract, and cater to them. The best advice that I ever received is everyone is not your audience. Find an audience and cater to them, and you'll do a much better job than trying to be everything to everybody. But no, short-term rentals can exist anywhere. It is, the cream does rise to the top when you have a great location, when you have great furnishings. But even if you don't, there's still, a huge market that we're finding every day that, people are coming to Louisville before all of this happened for a myriad of reasons. And almost every property has some level of demand. We've brought properties to the market that I thought were amazing and were going to crush it that just did average. And we brought properties to the market that I had strong concerns about that, completely exceeded my expectations. So it's really interesting how sometimes we're limited in our ability to harness some of these platforms and how they advertise and what they do. We can do our best to manipulate them, kind of like with, Google algorithms and things like that for search engine optimization. But at the end of the day, it still is a little bit of a free for all. So find your target market.
I have a private message. Have you guys canceled your May reservations, and are you using special pricing for May?
I'll say, we've gotten pretty much everything canceled by guests or asking us to cancel. We've been, and Jonathan, you can weigh in on this. We're very hesitant to cancel when we get requests to cancel, as much as, it's just very hard for us to trust Airbnb right now for everything they've done with their cancellation policies. So we're trying not to cancel reservations. We'll let the guests do it and just tell them to go ahead and call. But I'm not looking really until, like Jonathan said, probably until the end of June before we're going to start hopefully seeing some people. We have gotten some. We just got a couple bookings. We have a 33-day booking. We got. I manage a few properties now as well. I got this one guy. We're sort of turning him into monthly rentals at this point. But a couple came through Airbnb and a couple came through just listing on Zillow.
Yeah.
But yeah, so pricing, we've dropped it. I dropped the pricing, but I've also put a minimum some 7-day minimums, some even 20-day minimums on our properties, just because we don't want, we want to make some money out of it for those nights. We want to get guests that are in there for a long time. And then you also have to worry about, I just heard recently someone, the first lawsuit, I think it was a realtor. I don't know if you heard that. A suit was put, the guy got the virus from showing 3 houses. So he's suing the owners of these 3 houses, say he had to have gotten it from these houses. So I think putting people on a property and then the cleaning that comes after it, you might be setting yourself up there as well.
Well, I know that Airbnb has released some cleanliness standards that they expect, and they, in light of COVID-19, and there is also the ability to open up either for free or at a cost to travel nurses, emergency travelers, anybody who has to travel during this time, kind of a special designation for that. And they have cleaning guidelines for that as well. One is not sending anybody in within 72 hours. So they do expect you to block off, 2 to 3 days after every reservation before going in to clean. And that's something that we're exercising across the board as well. We have a residential cleaning side of our business just because of what we've built. During slow times, we wanted to keep our cleaners busy so that we had them when everything kind of came back in, since this can be a seasonal business. And we find people don't want us to come into their house to clean. Some of our cleaners don't want to go in to clean if people are still in there. So that's why we've instituted a 48 to 72 hour ban before we go into any property once somebody's left. But no, I haven't heard the story behind what you just mentioned with the person who is looking at properties, but I did see that it was released, I guess, to real estate agents. I don't know if it was from GLAR or what, but if people want to leave their properties on the market, or if people are still interested in looking through properties, they have to understand that there is, a risk of contracting, or because, a lot of people, when they have their houses listed, they still live in them too. They're not always vacant. Like in some investor properties. So, and a lot of tenants we're seeing don't want people to go through the property either if the property is for sale or coming onto the market for lease pretty soon. Those have been some conversations in our real estate office.
Have you been, I know you've gotten a lot of cancellations, but what have you been, how successful have you been in getting some new bookings, and what are you doing besides just Airbnb, VRBO, traditional listing right now to try to fill those vacancies?
Well, one of the benefits of our business and having been around for the period of time that we have and scaled as much as we have is visibility within the community. So a lot of people, including realtors and friends, family, they'll direct people to us whenever they're in need. So we've had a lot of realtors reach out to us, either clients or friends of clients who are coming into town or who have somebody that needs something. And remember, houses are still selling too. And because of just the perfect storm of what's happening right now, if somebody sells their house, people might not be able to find another house, and they may not be able to enter into an agreement where the new owner can lease the house back to them. So we have probably about 3 people that we've placed who are looking for somewhere to stay while they continue looking for houses. We've also placed an incoming doctor who for a year, who's going to be here. So we had to take one of our properties off the market for up to a year. But, given the circumstances, that might actually be a really good decision for that property owner. So they're coming in from a myriad of places, but we're still only about 25 to 30% full right now. So we have a long way to go in light of all of this. I'm really of the mindset that there will be a lot of forgiveness once this is over. So I encourage people not to panic. Our philosophy right now is nothing in, nothing out. Delay, defer as much as you can, take everything off of auto pay. You decide what gets paid and when, and negotiate as many deals as possible. But this is definitely not a time to be upset or to freak out. However, I am working with somebody who just closed on a condo and is ready to get it listed. And I want to congratulate them, but also just, shake my head kind of at the same time. It's just getting into this right now. How interesting.
Yeah, terrible timing. Frank Miller, former president of KREIA, has a question for y'all. What are you guys doing to prepare in case this epidemic lasts longer than expected? And do you see a lot of investors are on a standstill on purchasing new properties and projects? I guess your guy wasn't on the condo, but what are you guys doing to really protect yourselves during this time?
I'll start before you have a bigger operation going on, but we didn't foresee anything like this, but luckily we've had a surplus that we were able to save. Each property that we kind of isolate and has its own bank account, everything, and everything is run through there, and we don't take distributions. So we're in a position where we're trying to grow it. So we've had a several month surplus in there that we're able to, with no guests, get by and make our mortgage payments. We always have that deferment kind of in the back of our head, but hopefully we don't have to use that. And we are going after, there's some SBA loan and bailout kind of money that they say we may be entitled to. So we've gone after the economic, the disaster loan, that $10,000 grant. Hopefully we get that. I don't know if, Jonathan, if you've been applying for that, or I know for you may have employees, so you can get that payroll protection program. We, in my business, we have 1099 employees, so we can't really take advantage of that, but there are other programs. So I think we'll be all right, and we're looking forward to the fall, and hopefully, even if it does if there is a resurgence at that point, there at least will be some kind of treatment. There won't be a vaccine yet, but there'll be hopefully some kind of treatment. So I'm hoping that people will start traveling again. We're not super concerned. We're working on a new project, a new property too. So we'll have that up and running for the late summer. It's just sucks to see all these properties sitting there vacant. They're not getting abused. That's a good thing. But yeah, go ahead, Jonathan. What do you think?
Well, from a business standpoint, we're doing everything that most businesses are doing to help mitigate a lot of the downside of this. All of our employees are on furlough and filing for unemployment. Our cleaners are also filing for unemployment right now, and we're approving all of those. Everything that's within our ability to do. The paycheck, the PPP loan, I forget what the second two P's stand for. We bank with PNC, so theirs opened yesterday, but I did not try. It was backlogged, and I've heard horror stories of it taking 6 to 8 hours to get your application through. So that's on my agenda today.
Republic is pretty quick with it. Payroll protection program.
There we go. And then the SBA loans that are available. Airbnb will make a small grant program available to longstanding super hosts as well, which we will try to take advantage of. And a lot of other companies are offering things such as Verizon, AT&T. A lot of these have just smaller programs that are out that we're applying for. So as a business, that's where we are today. Nobody's in our office on a daily basis. We've gone from 35, 40 cleanings a week down to 7, 0 on some weeks. So that's where we are. From property standpoint, we're just, busting our butts to get out there, get creative, fill as many as we can for as long as we can. That's the goal. I am a little bearish on 2020 recovery for a lot of people. I think that, once it's safe to go out in public, we'll all still be very leery. I'll be practicing social distancing through the end of the year. Probably won't get on an airplane. Probably won't be in a big crowd. And because of that, I'm still concerned for Derby and for our September recovery. Which
it's
is
a wild September. It's one of my questions.
Yeah.
So if people
I heard that California also is going to have to delay probably start of even football season. Which is insane, which I think comes after Derby. So kind of the canary in the coal mine, I think.
Well, and that's a great reference, being in Kentucky. Love that. No, the question is too, we might have basketball or football whatever. But I mean, how long until you can actually have crowds at those events and concerts? I mean, September, you're supposed to have all three of the big concerts. You're supposed to have Derby. You're supposed to have football season. I mean, let's say all of those things actually happen, and we're a little skeptical. How are you going to plan on scheduling pricing on those? Because they're stacked on top of each other. They're not spread out. Are you just going to kind of put up a pie in the sky number and just hope you get it? What are you guys looking to do?
Well, a lot of that, there are so many factors that go into that. And, one was we talked about how this may reduce some of the bloat of the inventory that's on the market. So a reduction in inventory would mean that we have the ability to increase prices. But we also have to remember that we were in the midst of a hotel boom, and they've all had their doors closed for a long time. And I expect them to be very aggressive on pricing to start filling the hotels and recouping a lot of that lost revenue for the months that they had their doors closed, which are the most popular months in Louisville. It's always been May, July, and now September because of the music events. So we're missing out on July, and then May, Ironman in October. It's unknown if that'll continue, especially with the international travel component.
How terrible is that Ironman? I think it's 3 consecutive years they've had to cancel it, or in some facet, they got rid of the water because of some kind of algae last year. Got rid of it the year before.
Yeah, it was 2 years. I think it was a drought year before last, so the algae was really potent. But before that, I think it's been pretty well. And those are high-paying athletes who travel the world and have bikes that cost as much as some houses.
Yeah.
So that they pay a little bit more, and they travel with family and friends, and they make an entire week out of it. So a lot of that's up in the air. But if you want, we can kind of change the subject just a little bit and focus just kind of on more short-term rental in general, unless there are some more like kind of COVID-specific questions.
I've got 2 more COVID-specific questions, and then I have some general questions. Are you guys, Bergeron, great guy, has a couple of Airbnbs. Are you guys refunding 100% of your guest fees if they're outside the COVID-19 time frame through Airbnb, or are you guys keeping the difference?
Well, I'll say for us, we're sort of forced to from Airbnb. I mean, we tried everything we could to get guests to reschedule. And we offered before Airbnb kind of forced it upon us. We tried to offer 50% as a credit for future use. We're still sort of trying that. VRBO is a little bit different. They actually put it in the owner's hands, and we've kind of presented it that way. We're giving 50% back and 50% as a travel credit with us. Most of our bookings, I think 85% of our bookings are through Airbnb. So it hasn't been that too many people. And if a guest really screams and yells, we'll just give it back. I mean, when it first started, we were really pretty angry about the whole situation, and then we kind of given into the fact that it's a lost cause, and we're barely making any money, even with this 25%. I mean, it's 25% of 50%, so it works out to be 12.5%. So it's peanuts.
Yeah.
We had always taken the stance of giving forgiveness across the board. I honestly I didn't feel right about taking any money during this time when travel was literally, you could not do it. Some states people can't leave, limited air travel. So, like Eric, I was very angry at first. It felt like it was coming out of nowhere, and I was more scared at first than I am now. Initial reports really directed this towards the tourism and travel economy. You saw the airlines getting hit first, canceling all of their flights to China, and then then hotels and restaurants started to close their doors. And once I realized how widespread it was, I actually was more comfortable with it because I knew that the recovery was going to be much larger and essentially touch almost every single American
sector,
and even more globally. So once I realized it's not just focused on tourism, then we're not in as bad a position as I thought. There's going to be a lot of recovery aid behind this and forgiveness. But we honor every person who needs to cancel, I mean, at this point, like I said, we're proactively canceling just because we know that nobody's going to be traveling and we need to free up those dates so that we can shop for other uses of the property right now.
That's super smart. One, do you guys know, or Jonathan, I guess, do you have any clients that are looking to sell their properties currently, like get out of them?
Not yet. And I mean, anybody who would consider doing that, I do think it's a little bit premature. You know, the market, people are still buying, but, you know, it is a challenging time even for that. You know, like I'm about to list a property next week. But I don't know of anybody, none of our clients have come to us and said, I just want to go ahead and sell and get out. What do you think I can get? Because especially if you're selling for that reason, that's going to be a tough sell right now. You know, even if you have the returns and things to show, you know, to verify the income, we just don't know when we're going to emerge from this or exactly what it's going to look like. But you know, so I don't recommend buying specifically for this purpose right now until we have more information. But I also don't advocate selling right now either. Ask me in 3 months though.
Well, sure. Well, we are going to pivot now to just more generalized Airbnb questions, but not all of it's going to be positive, of course. Frank Miller, former president of KREIA, asked, like, what do you think about the Highlands getting a little saturated with Airbnb? Are there areas that you're targeting outside of the Highlands or whatnot? And it sounds like a general rule of thumb is the more bed bath counts, the better. I mean, what tips do you have to people that are looking to get an Airbnb?
Well, so yeah, let me first start by just talking about permitting and commercial use.
Sure.
So we do, for those people who have questions about permitting, we've created a guide. It's on our website. That's kind of the first page, but then on the second, it gets really into a lot of the zoning requirements. That is at keysourceproperties.com/realtor. You just enter your email address and then we'll email that to you and some other information. But so permitting is becoming more difficult to predict in residential areas. When the 600-foot rule first passed, BOZA was first very strict and they were first very liberal in how they applied it. Anybody and everybody who came through was getting permitted. I don't care if the houses were right next door to each other, across from each other. These people were already in the process. I think they were a bit sympathetic to that because outside of the 600-foot rule, they were giving zero guidance from Metro Council on how to justify or not justify the use of it. So that's kind of your unknown right there. You're solving for X, so you're solving for BOZA. And they are an extremely temperamental group. I mean, you know, if you get on their bad side, if they had a fight with their spouse that morning, if, you know, kicked the dog, that is all going to weigh into how they rule. I have seen identical cases, one early in the morning get approved, one later in the afternoon get denied. I mean, 2 properties within 600 feet equal distances. So it is extremely difficult to judge. Obviously, if you have 1 or 2 within 600 feet, if you can make a good case, if it's not within the center of a neighborhood, if it is close to a high density commercial, like along Bardstown Road, if you can show a different traffic pattern getting into this property, if you could show that these are long lots, and so from the front door of this property to the front door of the other property, that is actually 620 feet, you know, that would help. If there's off-street parking, that definitely helps the argument.
These are the golden nuggets that people come here for, Jonathan. Keep them coming. I mean, seriously, you guys, that's worth its weight in gold. And I think thinking outside the box like that is really valuable, which leads me to my next question. With hearing all this, I know you're super well connected, you're reading, you're all over the internet. Is there any unique things that you're seeing other people do in other markets that are making things more profitable? Example, like hanging local artists' art up in there for them to sell, and maybe you get like a 20% on it, and they kind of create the art for your house. What other weird stuff are you seeing people doing that you're finding success with, or they're finding success with it?
Well, we're always looking for ways to add value to our properties. And we actually have an artist in-house here who kind of works for us. They're not employed as an artist. They just happen to be one. In fact, let's see, let me grab a postcard here. He designed this original artwork for us. This is, we have we have a few condos near the Palace Theater on 4th Street.
That's awesome.
So this is like a horse. It's a postcard. So on the back of it, you can fill it out. We ask our guests if they take them as a souvenir, or if you want, fill it out and leave it behind, and we'll put the postage on it and mail it out for you, because, you know, it's additional guerrilla marketing for us.
Yeah.
Introducing maybe their family and friends to a city that they wouldn't have otherwise stayed in, and of course, providing our contact information. We've toyed with the idea of, you know, being able to provide certain essentials to them whenever they come, whether it be food, beverages, things like that. But we haven't really found a way to incorporate that into our operations without complicating things too much. Since we're working for reviews, you don't want to take somebody's money and promise them something, and then, you know, they get out of control, not be able to deliver on that. And so all of a sudden it's, you know, they've had a worse experience now, when before you were just providing the accommodation and, you know, kind of off the hook for the rest of it.
Sure.
And the same goes with, you know, customized experiences. We've had a lot of people approach us about doing various things, making them available to our guests. But, you know, at the end of the day, if you want yoga at your house, or if you want, you know, to have somebody come in and teach you how to cook something, then they better show up, or we're in the same position.
Yeah.
So we haven't gone out too much into those areas, just kind of, you know, again, adding complexity to operations, where when we already have 7 employees and 13 cleaners and, you know, all of this, then one more thing can, you know, hurt you more than it can benefit you sometimes. But people definitely have themes throughout their properties. You know, they want them to be Kentucky themed, Louisville themed, bourbon themed, horse themed. And a lot of those are great. When you see a lot of them, you know, it might lose a little bit of its flavor. But it's definitely good to incorporate those things. I think whenever you do a theme, go all out and do it. Again, that's finding your audience. You know, if you have a family-friendly property, you better stock it full of games. Maybe have some gaming consoles in there, or gaming consoles that people can rent from you. I've seen, you know, a lot of those. You know, just different things like that. If you have a great kitchen, really fill it up. Put a crock pot in there. Put, you know, high-end appliances, small appliances, things like that, and just put a list of them on what you on your listing, because, you know, we have people who have random requests. Hi, do you have a fryer? Do you have this? So again, if you're making yourself, if you say a gourmet kitchen, then prepare it for a gourmet chef, and that will be one of your audiences.
I will say, you know, to add to everything you said, there's so many properties listed right now. The only way you're going to get really consistent bookings is you have to stand out. So you have to have something unique. You have to have really good photographs. You can, you know, I know in VRBO you can add a link to a video walkthrough, something. You just have to, you really have to do some creative things in your property, because there's just so many that, even there's a lot that have nice pictures too. There's just a lot of properties. So all that stuff helps.
I guess we're getting close to closing up. Is there any areas that you guys are targeting just to maybe invest in, or you think the market's going to be on an upswing in that area?
I've never been an area specific type of guy, because each property is so individual. And it has its pros and cons. You know, you can be in a great area, but you could be too close to a bar. And, you know, so then you have to attract the people who are for very short stays. You can't have travel nurses or people who might need to sleep at night. You know, you also run the risk of it becoming, you know, a party pad if you're too close and you advertise too much to the wrong type of person. So every single property is unique and needs to be treated differently. Also, I do want to make sure that people know there are places in Louisville where short-term rentals are still not legal. That was part of the zoning and permitting portion of the conversation that I wasn't able to get to. But St. Matthews, there's only 1 or 2 types of zoning where it is allowed. And you want to speak to St. Matthews first, because they have to give permission to the city of Louisville in order for them to award either a permit, or I don't even think they're doing permits. I think they have to be a form of commercial zoning in St. Matthews, to where, you know, you can just register that. Middletown, it is allowed, and the 600-foot rule does not apply in Middletown, because their local officials have adopted the original metro ordinance, but they have not adopted the revised ordinance, which includes the 600-foot rule. Indian Hills does not allow it. Shively does not allow it. J-Town don't even think about it. You'll have a cease and desist letter on your door if you're thinking about it. So a lot of these individual cities, rule of thumb is if they have their own police department, they probably do not allow short-term rentals.
Oh, that's another golden nugget. Well, all right, guys, I just want to thank you guys for coming on. Wednesday, Rick Luttrell will be coming on to talk about all the membership benefits of KREIA. There's a lot of things in there that I didn't know about, and I'm on the board, so you're going to want to learn about it too. On Friday, we're going to have Luke Harwell, oh my gosh, Chase Craddock, and Lizzie Newts. We're going to be talking about syndicating. It should be a real treat. Once again, thanks for coming on, guys, and we'll see you at noon on Wednesday.